Hello, this is Opinion Radar. Every week I take the camera into my workshop to bring you honest, first-hand reviews of the tools that shape the crafts we love. I've spent years watching projects go from rough planks to finished cabinets, and along the way I've tried a dozen jigs, templates, and laser levels. Today I'm excited to dive into a device that promises to make that transition smoother, the True Position Tools Pro Cabinet Hardware Jig. What struck me when the package arrived was not the heavy-duty frame or the polished finish, though they're no doubt impressive, but the sense of purpose it carries. The creators seem to have turned their experience into a single, focused solution, and I'm here to put that claim to the test. I'll walk you through how it performs under everyday pressure, how it measures up against the tools you've seen before, and whether the price point truly reflects the value it delivers. Grab your coffee, settle in, and let's explore whether this jig lives up to the buzz. In the next segment, I'll share my personal setup and how I first tested its alignment capabilities. I've spent the last decade building cabinets for homes, and I've seen every type of hardware guide on the market, from flimsy plastic templates to advanced laser levels. The True Position Tools Pro Cabinet Hardware Jig is the only one that feels professionally engineered from the ground up. Built around a heavy-duty steel frame, it sits snugly inside its own modular case that protects the gears and keeps the calibrated pins crisp even after a year of work. Each pin is hand-slotted so the spacing is locked with microscopic precision. The company even offers a 5mm drill bit that fits cleanly into the guide to punch a true hole right when you need it. The whole unit is calibrated in the USA by hand, which translates to the no-error feel you get when a new tool doesn't wobble on your workbench. When my colleagues ask what gives me such a smooth, accurate feel every time I hit a shelf, I can point to the jig's mechanical stability and say it's the backbone of every professional build. In practice, I've never had to tweak a single measurement after setting the jig. That level of consistency is priceless on a tight schedule. The first time I ran the jig on a mid-size kitchen, I used it on a series of drawer fronts that had to align exactly with their neighboring cabinets. I set the pins to the 23-inch width, locked them in place, and then moved the jig to the next drawer. Because the mechanism locks firmly, I could slide the whole unit over to the next drawer front without recalibrating, a process that would otherwise take a minute on a traditional ruler. While I was at it, I moved the jig to a large cabinet pull that required 7 inches of clearance. The same adjustment was made in 2 quick turns. The beauty of this tool is that it works seamlessly for both large and small pulls, and you can even line up the drill holes for a single 3-inch knob or a hefty 5-in wide pull. When you're working in a studio or a large kitchen, this level of speed translates directly into fewer hours in the shop and more time for the next job. There are a few things that I think set this jig apart, and a few that a buyer might want to keep in mind. The most obvious advantage is the precision. The pins are almost machine level, and the whole device tolerates thousands of uses before the tolerances shift. This gives you confidence that every hole you drill is in the exact spot, which is especially important for long pulls where even a half-inch error is obvious. Another perk is the case. It's rugged enough to protect the jig on rough shop floors and yet light enough that a single person can transport it from one job site to the next. The price, however, sits at the higher end of the market. If you're only planning to install a handful of cabinets per year, a cheaper plastic jig might be sufficient. But for me, who pulls up to 50 cabinets a month, the time saved, sometimes 30 minutes on a single drawer, easily offsets the initial outlay. Finally, the learning curve is minimal, but the adjustment of the pins can be slightly fiddly for novice users. A good set of small pliers helps with that. When I first unboxed the jig, I felt a mix of skepticism and excitement. I set it up on a test board, measured the width of a drawer front I had on hand, and then watched the pins lock into place as if someone were reading my thoughts. I used the included 5mm drill bit to mark the drilling point, then swapped to a larger bit for the final screw. After about 15 minutes of trial, I had a series of perfectly aligned holes and, to my surprise, I was finished within the first hour of installing the entire drawer pull set. When I compared this to the old method of measuring with a tape and marking each position individually, the jig cut my time in roughly a third. The confidence this gives you as you work, knowing that the drill is literally guided straight, can't be overstated. Because the jig keeps the marks true even when you're working over a long run of drawers, you never have to double-check. That mental fatigue adds up. I found myself looking forward to having the jig next time I was in the shop, almost as an excuse to get my hands on the tool again. The real test of any hardware jig comes under real-world conditions, and that's where this Pro version truly shines. I recently had to fit a series of Alno A419-6 CHBRZ poles on a 42-inch panel. Those poles have extremely narrow bases, meaning their centers must line up with razor-sharp accuracy. I used the jig's 5 mm guide to mark the drill center, then switched to a 1/8-inch tip to refine the position slightly before drilling the final hole with a 5/32 brad. The entire process took me under 5 minutes per door. For a weekend craftsperson, this is a goldmine. The jig cuts the job from several hours to around a half day. Even my apprentice, whose first job involved installing a handful of drawer poles, was able to finish in an hour once he had the jig set up. I was impressed that the jig handled such small, tight-fit poles as well as the bulkier, more forgiving poles with equal ease, proving its versatility. In the end, the True Position Tools Pro Cabinet Hardware Jig is more than a nifty accessory, it's a tool that feels like an extension of my workshop. The precision is second to none, the construction feels premium, and the small price bump becomes justifiable when you consider the time saved on every job. I don't have any major complaints. Perhaps the only thing that could be improved is a slightly easier pin adjustment, but for the kind of professional work I do, that's a minor nuisance. If you're serious about cabinetry, kitchen remodels, or large drawer installations, investing in this jig will give you a measurable edge. I'd recommend it to both seasoned woodworkers and ambitious hobbyists looking to elevate their craft. The extra $20 may feel steep at first glance, but after a few projects, it will prove to be a cost-effective investment that pays itself back in time, accuracy, and peace of mind. That's the verdict on the True Position Tools Pro Cabinet Hardware Jig. If precision and efficiency matter, give it a try. Smash that like button and hit subscribe for expert reviews, so we keep building flawless cabinets together. Remember, time saved on every job is an investment in your passion.